Hey everyone, how's it going? Coming to y'all with yet another guitar review. This time we're looking at my favorite guitar that I own, which is my Ovation 1862 Custom Balladeer. I've had this thing for so many years now, literally almost as long as I've been playing guitar, and I love the way it plays, I love the way it sounds, I love the way it feels, and I have a great amount of sentimental attachment to this guitar. So before we jump into the review itself, I do have a few things to say. The first one is, like always, if you're looking for a shut up and play tone demonstration, you're not going to find it here. Okay, this is more about reviewing the guitar itself and less about showing how the guitar sounds. I will give tone demonstrations later on in the video. You might want to skip around and look for them. But that said, it's always hard capturing the way these things sound without putting a mic directly in front of them and direct line recording. Which I don't do for these reviews. I do, however, do them for comparison videos, and I do plan on doing a comparison video between this and the Ovation Celebrity, which is kind of mostly off frame, way over on the side there, because they're both super shallow bowl Ovations, but one's a budget line, one's a high-end guitar. And so I want to do a comparison of how those sound, and for that I will be doing video with a mic directly in front of the sound hole, and then recording that way. But for the purpose of this video, you're just getting it through my phone mic, which isn't the best. I have a pretty good phone, but at the end of the day, unless I get right up next to the microphone, you're not really going to get the most definition of tone. It's going to sound tinnier from this distance. It's going to sound quieter from this distance. It's going to sound shallower from this distance than it actually is. So keep that in mind. This video is not about showing you the tone, it is about talking about the guitar. Alright, so this one here, from everything I could find online, actually I have this open to the wrong page, I have my handy dandy notes off the side here, okay, is from 1990. Yeah, that's the information I was able to find online based on the serial number. So this is a guitar made in 1990, and that was one of the last few years when these were still made in the USA. So if you don't know, Ovation made these starting in the late 80s and through the 90s. And at first they were American produced guitars that had these diamond inlays, and on the fingerboard, which I'll bring that in now, those mother of pearl diamond inlay on that Ebony fingerboard. And you know, the other nice accoutrement that went with that, the Schaller, see if I can show you that, Schaller sealed tuning machines. Kind of jumping all over the place, but it's relevant for this point. And it was some of the last few years that used those high-end parts. They did later move the production of these over to Korea. Yeah, to Korea, where they went to a dot inlay and ping tuners, and they were basically the same as a Celebrity guitar, but with a solid top and a different bracing pattern. Which is another thing I have to talk about with this. This is not a standard X-brace pattern, okay? Nor is it a ladder brace, nor is it a fan brace. This was something that Ovation called their modified A bracing. And if you don't know what that is, you can look it up online. It's basically like a hybrid between a fan brace and a ladder brace. So it's a very unique bracing pattern that Ovation used on these, which does result in a very different tone from something that was X-braced, like the Celebrity, which has a more traditional sound to it. I think my low E is out there. And I'm going to go ahead and quickly tune this up on camera, which I should just restart the video, but I'm not going to. And it also helps me illustrate a point about Ovations that many people hate, and that is the headstock. So the headstock design on Ovations is very unique. It kind of has this shovel spade kind of thing going on to it. You can see the contour there. The problem with that is the majority of tuners, like this Korg here, this is a Korg Pitch Hawk G, have a very hard time grabbing onto it, and they start sliding off. Okay, so what you really end up having to do is clamping it to your sound hole, which is far from ideal, but it is the alternative is to just buy a dedicated sound hole tuner. There, get that under the string. There we go. go. Sounds better now. So, yeah, slightly out of tune there, and luckily it helped kind of show off a point, which is these headstock designs, which I think are really cool. I like the Ovation headstock shape, but I can't deny that it is damn inconvenient. That said, we do get a fairly decent string pull. You can see there it's relatively straight on the Ovations, whereas with many other guitars like Gibson, your strings are cocked way off to the sides on the headstock, where the headstock is fanned out, and that can cause problems with intonation. It can cause problems with string slippage in the nut. So I do have to give Ovation credit for their very straight string pull. I do want to do a video, by the way, about guitars like Ovation and Seagulls and things like that, which are very love them or hate them. And that'll be a point in the video. So yeah, rambling aside, going over the specs real quick on this, we have a solid Sitka spruce top, which, as you can see, is suffering from the typical Ovation syndrome, which is there are cracks in the top. Now, these don't go all the way through. I have reached inside and felt. Well, this one at the very least doesn't go all the way through. Catch the light there. This one doesn't. This one might. There's a brace directly on the underside of it, so I can't tell. So, but solid Sitka spruce top. This one is finished in that piano black, which collects fingerprints and scratches like you wouldn't believe. But, you know, it is what it is. They also made these in natural, which seems to be the more common version. We have this beautiful rosette, which is also suffering from a typical Ovation issue of it starting to come up, and I need to re-secure it. I love Ovations, guys, I do, but I'd be a liar if I didn't tell you about the problems that they have. And I do plan on being fully honest with all of my reviews. This is my favorite guitar. It has issues. Ebony fingerboard, as I mentioned before, walnut bridge. We have a mahogany neck, and it is a very interesting shape. I would definitely call this kind of a U shape. It's a little thicker, but also fast at the same time. It feels very natural to move up and down. I'm not a lead player, but it feels so natural to move up and down this neck, despite it being a slightly thicker U shape. It's gonna be hard to show that on camera what the neck shape is and what the neck profile is, but it is a very comfortable mahogany neck. Now the nut and saddle on this are plastic, okay? And for the nut, that is definitely an issue we can fix. We can order a tusk nut or a bone nut and fit it in there. The saddle, not so much, and the reason why is the pickup for this is kind of installed into this. Now I can't really show this because I had to take the strings off and everything, but you can see the way the saddle is set up and compensated there. You see how there's 6 individual saddles kind of all in a line? Each of those has its own piezo crystal under that individual portion of the saddle. Okay, that's a feature on these higher end Ovation pickups, and they still use pickups like this to this day. And so as a result, if you wanted to get a bone saddle or a tusk saddle for this thing, you'd have to make it yourself. You'd have to get it and carve it and shape it, and it would be a pain in the ass. And then you'd have to compensate it yourself, which would be even more of a pain in the ass. So, not really any way of upgrading the plastic saddle on this. Okay? Now, I have taken all the shims out of the saddle because Ovations always come shimmed. Taken all the shims out, straightened the truss rod, and it's still going to suffer a little bit from the Ovation issue of high action. Not as bad as many others, but you can see there the action on this guitar is starting to get relatively high once we get past the 7th fret or so. Not to the point where it's uncomfortable. It's still very easy to play notes all up and down the neck, but again, it's there. It is slightly high. And I'm not going to lie to you guys about that. So why is this my favorite guitar when it has all these issues? I'll tell you in a second. 1 11/16 nut. Scale length on this, I have it written down. 25.25 inches. We have a Lyrachord bowl, super shallow, for the back and sides there. And for I already told you about the pickup, we have a FET 3 preamp, which you can see the bass knob on mine is broken off. And yeah, I did that when I was younger and I was being stupid. They were very stiff. And they still are a little stiff, honestly, so you have to be careful when moving them. And I wasn't really in a patient mood, and I went to quickly adjust it, and I snapped it right off. and I've been searching for a new preamp to replace it with ever since. Oh, and the battery is one of those things where you have the compartment which is screwed in, and you have to loosen the strings and get inside the sound hole and mess with it. So, not great on the battery storage. How this thing sounds plugged in, I will link in the description down below a plugged-in demonstration where it is directly run through my audio interface and recorded with a crappy Bandicam setup and HE webcam. But the audio quality is relatively decent on that, and you can hear a good representation of how this actually sounds plugged in that way. Anything else to say spec-wise about this? Oh yeah, the pickup is called the RKPU0001-AL, for anyone who cares about that. MSRP on these back in the day was $1,200. These days you typically find them closer to about $700. Okay, and again, this one's made in the USA. So why is this my favorite guitar? Well, for one, whenever I had first started playing guitar, my very first guitar ever, which I still own, was a Squier Bullet Stratocaster. And my first acoustic ever was an Airline N1, N2 archtop. I forget the exact model number on it, but it wasn't a very good guitar, but it was mine. I started looking around at guitars online, and I set my sights on Ovation almost immediately. I loved the weird bowls. I thought it was kind of a cool design feature. I love the story behind it, about how the founder of the company basically took a bunch of airplane and helicopter parts and cobbled together guitars with it. I thought it was super cool. And so I really wanted an Ovation. It kind of became my dream guitar. It didn't even matter which Ovation, just an Ovation. And my brother, who was going to college at the time, had gotten a Pell Grant, and he'd already paid off paid for his classes, paid for his school books, and he had quite a bit of money left over. And he just asked me if I wanted to go to the bank with him to cash the check, because he already had it all mapped out, and I said sure. And I walked to the bank with him, and on the way back we stopped by a local pawn shop, and this was hanging on the wall for, I think the guy wanted 190, 180, something like that. And I immediately fell in love with it and started playing it. And my brother started talking to the guy I didn't even notice and negotiating a deal because of these two top cracks, talked him down to, I think it was 130. And it came with the hard shell form-fitted Ovation case, which by itself is worth more than that 130. And he told me, "Hey, it's yours now." And I was obviously super stoked. I couldn't wait. I loved the way it played, and I loved the way it felt. And I had my dream guitar very, very early on. And it wasn't even an applause or a celebrity, which are good in their own right, by the way. But it was something entirely different. It was in a league far above those. And that was so cool to me. It still is so cool to me. And even today, I love the sound of this thing. I love the way it feels. I love the way it plays. I love everything about this guitar, despite its issues. Okay, I love the headstock despite its issues. I love the Ovation design despite all the flaws that come with it. Okay, it's a love it or hate it kind of thing, and I'm definitely on the love it side. There are no sharp fret ends, so it is super easy to get up and down the neck and play. I really don't have too much negative to say about the guitar. Well, that's not true. I have negatives to say about the guitar, but they aren't negatives to me. They are objectively problems, but they aren't something that I take particular issue with, if that makes any sense. So to give you all some tone demonstration, let's see here. Know that's not going to pick up very well through this mic, so believe me, it sounds better in person than it does through this microphone. A few things I forgot to mention. We do have purfling along the body of the guitar, kind of a cream purfling and cream binding. And this is wood. This is actual wood binding running all along the body of the guitar. Nothing on the neck. Strap button placement is perfect and it hangs beautifully. Back to the demonstration of the guitar tone. Now I'll sit up a little bit closer to try to make this a little better, at least. Do some finger picking. I always screw up on these videos, and I don't know why, but it is what it is. I'm not gonna, start freaking out over it now. I'm damn sure not gonna re-record it. If I screw up, I screw up, and you're gonna see it. I love the way this thing sounds finger-picked. I really do. In terms of the volume on these super shallow bowls, a lot of people think that they're going to be quiet like a thin line acoustic. They really aren't. They really do have volume. And I mean volume that easily matches any dreadnought you're going to find. It's going to be louder than the concerts you're going to find. And the reason for that is all pretty simple. Your sound is primarily generated from the top and the things the strings are making direct contact with. So there's going to be, the top, the bridge plate, the saddle, the nuts, and of course the strings themselves. Those are what's primarily generating your sound. As the top is vibrating, that's where the sound is coming from. Of course, the saddle and everything else, as the strings are strummed, are affecting that. They're contributing to that. But as those vibrations are created, the job of the back and sides of your guitar is to push those sounds out of the sound hole. With a traditional wood back and side, with a bunch of bracing, there's a lot of things that kind of help to funnel that, but as a result, they also absorb some of that. And so the wood is dampening, or not really dampening, I shouldn't say that, it's absorbing some of that vibration and therefore some of that tone. Whereas with this Lyrachord, it's a fiberglass composite bowl. It's not absorbing any of it. It is pushing all of that directly out of the sound hole. So even with a thinner body, we're able to obtain a much louder sound. All right, I mean, very loud. Now, give me just 1 second. Okay. Went ahead and grabbed a deep bowl Ovation, and you can see the difference in the depth of these things. And I have no idea if this applause here is tuned, but just for a quick show and tell, I'm going to do the E chord on the super shallow. Okay, now I'm going to move over to the deep bowl, same chord. not sure how much difference you can hear in the volume through the camera mic, but this is a lot louder in person. Okay. And keep in mind that I already identified the super shallow as being as loud as a dreadnought. Those deep bowls, they sound bigger than a dreadnought. They sound bigger than a jumbo. They sound bigger than any all-wood guitar you're going to find, because they have a big-ass fiberglass bowl that is absorbing none of that vibration and is pushing all of it directly out that sound hole like a cannon. Upside of that is you'll hear it. Downside of that is it can tend to be a little heavy on the bass and mid side of things. Although that one has a little more treble focus, you don't get as much definition between strings, and so things can sound a bit more muffled or jumbled together with a deeper bowl. I actually feel the shallow bowls that you'll see like this, shallow and super shallow, are kind of the ideal size for an Ovation. Especially because they also don't suffer the deep bowl issue of wanting to roll off your leg. You see this thing hasn't gone, belly up on me, because they are thin enough that it's easy to rest them on your leg. And when you're standing, even when you have a fat gut like I do, the bowl isn't so big that it's wanting to slide around everywhere. So these really are the superior style Ovations, in my opinion, in terms of bowl depth. And I think that Ovation should focus on it a little bit more than they currently do, because they don't offer very many guitars with a super shallow bowl. Yeah, love this guitar. It's a great guitar. I love the way it sounds. I love the way it plays. I love the way it feels. Whenever I want to do some finger picking, this is the one I almost always grab first. Just because it feels so easy to play and it sounds wonderful when finger picked. When strummed, I still think it has a good sound and a unique sound when strummed, but it isn't my go-to guitar for that. It is, however, my go-to guitar for anything fingerstyle, and it's definitely the guitar that I've written the most songs with, maybe tied with my Sigma back here, which I'll also review soon, as that is my workhorse guitar. This one gets babied a bit more. But that's been the review and story and long-winded rant that I'm sure most of you tuned out a long time ago about my Ovation 1862 custom Balladeer. If you do want to hear how this thing sounds a little bit better, like in terms of better recording, just wait for my comparison video that I'm going to make for it versus the CC57 Celebrity, which all that'll be done with a microphone in front of the sound hole, and then record it that way. And then for the electronics, run directly through an audio interface and record it that way. So yeah, it's been my review on this Ovation. I hope you guys enjoy. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time.